We continue now at the top of Daf Mem Beis Amid Beis Meseches Sanhedrin. This is Sanhedrin Daf 42b. This is the beginning of the sixth parak of Meseches Sanhedrin. The Mishnah says, Nigmar Hadin, if they reach a verdict, this is a verdict of guilty. Motziano Sola Soklo, so then they bring him out to give him skila, to stone him. Beis HaSkila, the place where they gave him skila, Hayachutz LeBezdin, that was outside of Bezdin. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, Hotzeis HaMakala, you have to take the blasphemer out. Echad Omed Al Pesach Bezdin VaHasudrin Biyadu, there would be one person who would stand by the entrance of the court with the cloths in his hand, Vesus Rochok Mimenu, and then there was a horse that was a distance from him, Kadeshi Roehu, but it was close enough that he'd be able to see him. And therefore, Omer Echad Yesh Lalamid Olav Zuchus, if somebody would say that I have a reason to teach that this person is actually innocent, Halom Meinif Pesudrin, the person standing there with the cloths in his hand, he would wave the cloths, Vahasus Rutz, and then the horse would run, Umamidan, the person on the horse, would run with the horse in order to stop them from going to stone the person. V'afilu hu omer, and even if the defendant himself says, Yesh li lalamed al atzmi zechus, that I have a reason to teach why I am innocent, machzirno, so we return him. Afilu arba v'chomesh pa'amim, even 4 or 5 times, uvilvad sheyesh mamish b'dvarav, so long as there is substance to his words. And Rashi explains, Nigmar Hadin Lechova, again they reach a guilty verdict. Motziano so l'soklo, they bring him out in order to give him skila. Aidi, dis skila reisha dekula arba misos, since stoning is the first of the 4 death penalties, he mefaresh mili dida bereisha, that's why that's the one that's explained first. V'hadim mefaresh shara bepirkan de lakaman kaseder, and in the later prakim they'll explain the other ones as well. Chutz lebezin, again they would bring him to the area of stoning that was outside of the court. Rachog mi bezin ksas, it was a little bit distant from the court. It says you have to take him out. Al Malav b'makam havad katlu. You see that they didn't kill him in the place of assembly. V'asudrin biyado l'kamim mefarish l'maymi boy. Later on, the Gemara will explain what we needed these sudrin for. V'hasus rachog mimenu kadesha ye adam rochev al sus. And then again, the horse was a little bit distanced in order that a person can ride on the horse. V'nimshach al sad beis haskila shekarv lirdof achar neskol, and he'd be able to quickly run after those who are getting stoned. Umatzel, he'd be able to save the person. Umisrachag mizeh shasudrin biyado mali einav. Now he was distanced from the person who had the cloth in his hand, but it was close enough that he could see him. As long as he could see, and when the person would wave the sudrin. If somebody from the court said, I have a reason why he's innocent, the person again who was standing by the door, he'd wave the sudrin, and the person riding on the horse would see, and he would run after and stop them. The court would investigate to see if there was a good reason to say innocent. When the person himself would give a reason, there had to be some kind of evidence, some kind of substance why he would be innocent. The Gemara will ask, how would they know whether he had any substance in his words? They're not even students, and that the Gemara will deal with. And the Gemara says, was the area of stoning, was it just outside of Bezin and not any further than that? But then we learn a brayso that the Beis HaSkila was actually outside all 3 camps. And Rashi explains, it doesn't need to be outside of the 3 camps. But again, it says in the brayso, it was chutz l'shalosh machanos. B'Yerushalayim hu t'shayich l'mei mardika azora machan eshchina. There you have 3 camps and talking about Yerushalayim, because the azora, that's the first camp, that's the machan eshchina, that's the camp of the shchina. V'harabayis machan levia, and then the harabayis is considered the camp of the Levis. V'chol ha'ir machane Yisrael, and then the city of Yerushalayim is considered machane Yisrael. It would be outside of Yerushalayim. That's where the Beis HaSkila was. Now, when it came to courts in other cities as well, we can apply it there. Have a Beis HaSkila chutz le'ir dumya Yerushalayim. So the Beis HaSkila would be outside of that particular city, similar to the way it was outside of Yerushalayim. And so again, it's not simply chutz le'bezin; it's outside of the entire city. And the Gemara says, in yes kedukarmet, like you said, v'hadikatani hachi. And the reason why it says chutz le'bezin, why doesn't it say outside of the city? Nafkamina, the difference is the nafik beidina v'yosef chutz l'shalosh machanos. Let's say the court, for whatever reason, would be outside of the city, would be outside of the 3 machanos of din and Beis HaSkila chutz le'bezin. Still, you would make the Beis HaSkila outside a certain distance from the court. Ki hechi delo mischazi bezdin rotzchim, and the reason for that was in order that Bezin should not look like murderers. We don't want to murder them right there, and we don't want to kill the person right there in the court. Inami, or the reason why it's distanced from the court, that way there would be a way of saving the person. You don't kill him right away. You have to take him somewhere in case somebody finds a reason for innocence. We'll be able to stop the execution. And the Gemara continues, Minoha Nimili, from where do we know these words? Meaning to say, from where do we know this idea that you have to take him? The Beis Haskila is outside of the Shalosh Machanos, the Tanur Rabbanon, because the rabbis taught, Hotzi Esa Mekalel Michutz LaMachane. It says that you take the Mekalel, the one who cursed, that was talking about stoning the person, you take him Michutz LaMachane. And so the Brisa says, Chutz LaGimel Machanos. What it means is, like we said above, outside of the three Machanos. Ata Omer Chutz LaGimel Machanos, so Eino Ela Chutz LaMachane Achas. You're saying it's outside of the three Machanos, maybe just outside of one Machane. Nemar Kan Michutz LaMachane. It says over here, Michutz LaMachane. V'nemar beparim hanisrafin, and it says by the bulls which are burned. These are the offerings of, it's a carbon chatas that's burned. It says chutz l'machana. It says it's outside of the camp. Malahalan chutz l'shalosh machanos, just like over there, it's outside of the three camps. Afkan chutz l'shalosh machanos. So over here, it's outside of the three camps. And Rashi explains, Menohani mili the Beis Haskila chutz l'shalosh machanos. From where do we know that the Beis Haskila is outside of the three camps? We learn it from parim hanisrafin, from these bulls which are burned. It refers specifically to the par helim davar shel tzibur. That's the par that's brought when the tzibur, when they sin. Upar kohen Mashiach, also referring to the par that's brought by the kohen Mashiach. She'ena necholin, these bulls, they're not eaten el nisrafin, they're burned. It's a kind of carbon chatas that's burned. K'dechsiv v'hotzi, it's called apar el michutz lamachan. It says you're going to take him michutz lamachan. And the Gemara continues, v'hasam and nolan, and over there, how do we know that it's chutz l'shalosh machanos, meaning by the parim hanisrafin? How do we know that? The Tanur Rabbanon, because the rabbis taught, v'hotzi es kol hapar el michutz lamachana. It says again, you're going to take the par michutz lamachana. Chutz l'shalosh machanos. It means to say outside of the three camps. Ata omer chutz l'shalosh machanos, so eino ela chutz lamachana achas. You're saying it's outside of the three camps. Maybe it should just be outside of one camp. Kishu omer el michutz lamachana bepor ha'eda. When it says el michutz lamachana by por ha'eda, she'ein Talmud lomer. The pasuk doesn't need to say that sharei kvar nemar, because it already says v'saraf oso kasher saraf es ha'por harishon. It says you burn it in the same way that you burn the first par. Litein lo machana shniya. So that extra pasuk is saying you take it out of two camps. Uchishu omer el michutz lamachana b'deshen. And when it says el michutz lamachana by the ashes, she'ein Talmud lomer, doesn't need to say that sharei kvar nemar, because it already says in the pasuk al shefach hadesh and yisarif. It already mentions that litein lo machana shlishis. So that's to say a third camp. That's how we know that you take it by the parim hanisrafim. You take it outside of all three camps. But the Gemara continues, V'leilef mi shchutei chutz. Why not learn out instead from shchutei chutz? Meaning to say, Malahalan chutz l'machana achas. Just like by shchutei chutz, you're not allowed to shecht. You're not allowed to slaughter a carbon outside of the Beis HaMikdash. We're talking about even outside of one machana. Afkan chutz l'machana achas. So too over here by stoning. Maybe we just mean to say chutz l'machana achas. And Rashi explains, V'leilef mekalel mi chutz l'machana de shchutei chutz. Why not learn out by mekalel? The chutz l'machana is the same as by shchutei chutz, to have a chutz l'machana achas, meaning it would just be outside of one camp. Like it says, the person didn't bring the animal to the Pesach Oel Moed, he was outside of that one machana. And the Gemara continues, Mistabra mi parim hanisrafin havale lamelef. It makes more sense to learn it out from parim hanisrafin, which is outside of all three machanos. Shekein hotzi el michutz lamachana machshir u'mechaper, because it has in common the fact that it's hotzi el michutz lamachana, the fact that it's machshir, and the fact that it's mechaper, meaning to say those they have in common with the case of the mekalel. And Rashi explains, Shekein hotzi el michutz machshir mechaper simenhu shadoma mekalel parim hanisrafin. This is like a siman, it's a mnemonic in the ways that mekalel is similar to parim hanisrafin b'chol eila v'lo l'shchutei chutz. It's more similar to parim hanisrafin in all of these ways, and not to shchutei chutz, as Rashi now explains. Hotzi b'mekalel uparim nemar hotzah v'lo b'shchutei chutz. It uses the word hotzah by mekalel in the parim. That's one thing that they have in common. And Rashi continues, michutz lamachana hamer b'shneim, and the michutz lamachana that said by both of them, meaning to say by the mekalel and by the parim hanisrafin, hechsher mitzvason bekach. That's a preparation for their mitzvah. Umichutz lamachana hamer b'shchutei chutz ein hechsheron ela averohi. The michutz lamachana by shchutei chutz is not preparing for anything. That's actually considered to be an avera. It's not supposed to be shechted outside of the azara. Again, when it comes to the case of the mekalel, the whole point is the michutz lamachana is in order to be allowed to give him skila. And when it comes to the parim hanisrafin as well, you're specifically doing it in order to prepare prepare to burn the parim hanisrafin in the proper place. Uvemekalel uparim, and then also by the mekalel and the parim, mechaper hotzasan, taking them out to that place is like a kapara, it's an atonement. Like it says in the Mishnah later on, avol shchutei chutz ain't a kapara lachet, but when it comes to shchutei chutz, that's not an atonement, that's actually a sin. You're not supposed to shecht it over there. But the Gemara continues, Adrab, on the contrary, mishchutei chutz havalei lamelach. Really, we can say that we should learn out mekalel from shchutei chutz, shekein adam chotei b'neshama pigul, because it has in common adam chotei b'neshama pigul. That's what it has in common with shchutei chutz. And Rashi explains, shekein adam, the first similarity is it's talking about people, meaning mechutz lamachane de mekalel ba'adam ksiv. The mechutz lamachane by the mekalel, you're taking the person outside of the machane. V'chein amar b'shchutei chutz ha'adam hashochet koi. The same is true by shchutei chutz. We're going on the person doing the shchita. Shelo yishchet michutz lamachane. He shouldn't do the shchita outside of the camp. And michutz lamachane amar b'parim. And when it comes to the mechutz lamachane by the parim, aparkoi, that's actually going on the bull. V'lav ha'adam, it's not going on the person. To loks of yotza el v'hotzi. It doesn't say the word yotza. It says v'hotzi as kol hapar el michutz lamachane. And Rashi continues, chote, the next thing they have in common is chote, mekalel chote, who the mekal is a sinner, v'shochet chutz chote, and also shochet chutz is a sinner, lafuke par de lav chote, who that's not true by the bull. And the next thing they have in common is bineshama, michutz lamachane shel shneim, netilas neshama, nemar zen niskal v'zeh shochet. By the case of michutz lamachane, by both of these cases, by the shchutei chutz and also by the mekalel, we're talking about netilas neshama, taking the life. In this case, we're talking about zen niskal, we're talking about the fact that the person is being stoned to death. V'zeh shochet, in the other case also, we're talking about shechting the animal. Shchutei chutz, aval par shochet v'yomid. By the par, it already was shechted. You're just talking about burning it. Lishna achrina, Rashi says another explanation of what netilas neshama is. Netilas neshama de shochet chutz hainu chiyav kares. It could be that the netilas neshama of shchutei chutz is the fact that the person is chayiv kares. Shem is chayiv v'shchitazu. By shechting outside of the mikdash, he's chayiv kares. And finally, the last thing they have in common is pigul michutz lamachane de shchutei chutz umekalel iyatam motzei pigul al yad oso chutz lamachane. By both of the case of shchutei chutz and by the case of mekalel, it's not a situation of pigul through that chutz lamachane. Avol parim ru'uyin lehispagel al yad oso chutz lamachane. But by the parim, you can have a situation of pigul through that chutz lamachane, meaning shem shachtu al manas lahakter emurein b'chutz mispaglin. If you would shech them on the understanding, on the condition that you're going to burn the emurim outside of the mikdash, that would be pigul. Velishna dekra nakat, Rashi notes that we're using the language of the pasuk to kari chutz l'mekomo pigul. When you do something outside of the proper place, the pasuk refers to that as pigul. Kedaminu bezvachim, like we say in zvachim. Yafagav delishna derabanan. Even though when the rabbanan are speaking, lo kari pigul elo chutz l'zmanu, they only refer to pigul as chutz l'zmanu. So again, that's another similarity between the case of shchutei chutz and the case of mekalel. But the Gemara continues, machshir mi machshir adif lei. It's better to learn machshir from machshir, meaning to say, if you're going to learn the case of mekalel either from parim hanisrafin or from shchutei chutz, it's better to learn from parim hanisrafin because both are machshir, as we said above. And the Gemara continues, Rav Papa says, Moshe heicha hava Yosef, the way that we know that you're taking the person who's being stoned outside of the three machanos is from the following, because Moshe, where was he? B'machane Leviah, he was in Machane Leviah, he was a Levi. V'yamar lei Rachman, and the pasuk is saying to him, Hotzi es ha-mekalel michutz lamachane, take the mekalel, the one who cursed outside of the machane. That's chutz lamachane Leviah. That means outside of the Machane Leviah, where Moshe Rabbeinu was. And then the pasuk says, Vayotziu es ha-mekalel michutz lamachane. It says that they took him outside of the machane. That refers chutz lamachane Yisrael. That refers to outside of Machane Yisrael. But the Gemara says, Haimi boy leil asiyah. But that pasuk of Vayotziu es ha-mekalel is just saying that they did what was instructed. And the Gemara says to that, no, asiyah behed yaksiv. It's already written explicitly that they did what was instructed. And Rashi explains, Moshe Levi Hoya. Moshe was a Levi. V'shori b'machane Levi. He was in Machane Levi. V'amar le'rachman hotze. And the Torah says to him to take out la'asiyah lomar shekmoshe nitztavu kachasu. But isn't that pasuk of Vayotziu saying that they did what they were commanded? And again, the Gemara said that's already written. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Mem Gimel Amud Aleph.